this is our second official budget workshop for Crafton. So I'm going to go over what I did last time to start, just to reassert what we talked about last time. First thing I'm going to talk about are the fund balances. Then I'll talk about the 4 different fund budgets that we manage and set up. Then the capital expense plan, which is a 5-year capital plan for everything but the properties. The bond project tracking sheet, which is tracking all of the larger projects in our bond fund. And then the budget planning document with decisions, which is the final thing we'll discuss. I also have some new items on here that I'll be discussing. So talking about the general fund budget, all of our bills are paid out of the general fund, and we transfer money into the general fund from the road fund, the sewer fund, the bond fund for payment. So everything goes through the general fund. Generally speaking, you want to have about 3 months of expenses on reserve. And that's where that goal comes in on the right-hand side. You can see our general fund reserve fund does not have that. But with our general fund, in total, we do have more than enough to match that. And we will be watching that closely in the new year. The road fund, which I'll discuss again later, is pretty overfunded. We only need to have in reserve about $160,000. We have more than $2 million in reserve. We do anticipate about $400,000 worth of expenses still to come out of that this year. But we have more than enough in our road fund and enough in our reserve for the road fund. For the sewer fund, we have $750,000. We need to have $750,000 in the reserve, and we have 1.1 million or 1.2 million, so we're good there. And the sewer fund is still is healthy, although that number will probably go down, and so will the reserve when we make transfers at the end of the year. So that it might get close to 750 at the end of the year, but we're still in good shape there. The bond fund has 3.1 million in it, but that is there are still a lot of grant money to come in and a lot more projects in the pipeline. So really the best way to look at that is actually to look at the bond fund. And we'll talk about that in a minute. The SCBA reserve is essentially money that we put away for the fire department every year so that they can buy the personal equipment that they use to go into buildings when they're on fire.
What's SCBA stand for?
I knew you were going to ask that, and I don't know. I'll look it up and get back to you, but it's
Someone can Google it.
yeah.
Okay,
I don't remember. Then petty cash is what we have in the office, and some one flex spending account that we have as well. So in total, total fund balance currently is 9.2 million overall. The draft budgets for 2025, the general fund is just under 6.5 million. The bond project fund is approaching 10 million. There are a lot of projects going on next year, mainly Broadhead and the C20 work. So there's a significant amount of work, and probably the Borough building. I mean, the Public Works building. So all that is happening. The sewer fund is 2.6 million, and the road fund is 674,000 as it's currently drafted. We've talked about the 5-year capital improvement plan. Again, this is primarily for vehicles. So we have all of the dump trucks and vehicles that need to be used by Public Works, and the police and fire vehicles are all in there as well. And that is all built into the budget planning doc. So these 5-year improvements are baked into the budget. So you don't have to make these choices every year. They're automatic. The bond project tracking sheet, we've talked about several times. There's 4 spreadsheets altogether in that. There's the committed projects. There's the projects that have been completed, pending and proposed projects. Those are typically projects that we maybe have applied for grant funding and haven't gotten it yet. So we don't know how that's going to line up. And then we have the actual cost, which is an entire spreadsheet of all the costs that have happened over the last 3.5 years. And then we're estimated to have about $650,000 left in that is not yet accounted for. And so I'll just say what I said last time, which is that we really should hold on bond fund project.
Yeah.
Unaccounted
Right,
for
that's-
or uncommitted.
I would.
Oh, yeah.
Change that.
Thank you.
That's-
That is,
yeah.
It's like, oh,
Yep.
we're 650.
yeah. No, thank you. That is That is true. It is uncommitted, not unaccounted for. Okay.
That's it, yeah, 2 Gs and you can take the 4 off.
Yep, thank you.
And that just means there's 650,000 that we haven't,
Allocated for anything.
gotcha. Okay.
Exactly,
Okay.
but.
Have to.
It is uncommitted.
Yeah, is uncommitted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, there we go.
And we have to use because the usage expires right in 2028.
No,
So,
no, you have to use the bond funds. You have to use 80% of the bond funds within 4 years. 4 or 5, 4 years of the of taking it out, and we're gonna be well past that. We do have to, and I mentioned this last time, we are gonna have a interest liability in 2026. Because we took these grant funds out, we took these loan funds out at 1.45%, or I'm sorry.
It's 3 point something.
Yeah, I forget the exact, I don't think it's 3. I forget the exact,
The interest we're paying?
yes. Well, I'm talking about both. So, we're allowed to make 1.45% off the interest. However, because of, what's that?
We can make 1.45% interest income on our funds.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. Thank you for, yeah,
All right,
that is correct. And so at the end of, when we reach the 5-year mark, if we have made additional interest above what is possible at 1.45%, we will have to pay that back. Currently, that's about $4,000. If we would have to pay it back right now, I anticipate it'll go up first. So I anticipate we'll probably have some kind of liability in the $50,000 to $100,000 range at the end of this at most. Which will have to be paid back in March of 2026. And that's because we've been making more interest off of this than typically
what
anticipated,
regulations allow.
right, than regulations allow, exactly.
So that is probably something we want to start tracking as a line item on there.
Yeah, I already have it tracked now.
Okay.
So, and I can
basically
put it in the
how-
bond, actually, I should, and I will put it in the bond sheet. I don't
Right,
have that.
that's right.
Yeah. it should be
Currently in the bond sheet. Yep,
So that we can see as that comes down, if it's gonna go as high as 75 or 100,000. I mean, that's significant.
exactly,
So
yes,
we're gonna wanna know, does that mean that we're gonna have 550,000?
exactly.
Yeah.
And the other reason to not touch this money is, we have $10 million in projects, and 10% of $10 million is $1 million. So it is quite likely that those projects are under or over, and we have to be cautious about
Right,
how they proceed, since they are large projects, and 10% is not an unusual overage on a project of those sizes. So we really want to watch
so
and have to watch
then, I
that.
mean, especially because we have Larry on staff, we can be having a really close look in case there's something we have to pull back and not do.
Yep.
Because there's something more important that overruns.
And that is a good segue to when Larry talks tonight, he's gonna actually ask for several motions tonight
Mhm.
regarding authorizations for engineering work. So in the past, we had not brought those to council, but now anytime we have significant engineering asks or authorizations, we're gonna bring them to council for approval. So that will be, he'll talk about that later when he asks for a couple motions. Yeah, any other questions on the bond tracking sheet before we move on? Okay. And this, I want to provide, this is all additional information for tonight. And first, I want to say that I went back through the entire budget and basically was more conservative on my estimates to make sure that we end up not over budget next year. So I went that, and so that means we have a little less discretionary spending than we originally did. And we also have a few more costs than we originally did. We mentioned this, I think, at the last meeting, or this was discussed at least, that the garage floor in the police station needs to be replaced. We did have a structural engineer take a look at it and basically told us not to use it. moving forward. So I think this is a very important thing to do. The last thing we want to do is bring on a new chief and have them forced to not use their main garage. So we're waiting for, we have a verbal estimate of $30,000 to $80,000. I'm awaiting a written estimate to get that maybe a little closer, so we know what the potential will be for that. Currently, there's a risk of the floor falling, so we don't want that to happen. And then on to O&M sewer estimates. So we are waiting on an explanation of the exact estimates, but if you recall last year, during budget talks, we discussed manhole to manhole lining, we discussed excavation repairs and spot liners. We spent a little over 500,000, well, we budgeted $500,000 for that this year. In 2023, in 2024. And we might still have some room, and we're waiting, some of these, some of the projects from this year have not completed. And we're under budget on a few of them, so we might be able to slide in some of those these repairs into this year's budget. And we're gonna try to do that. So I don't have final numbers on this yet, but I will be getting better numbers by the next, we're meeting with Gateway either next week or the beginning of the following week to discuss better numbers for these. And we'll be able to decide, you know, what repairs make sense to do right away, what repairs can be pushed off. We wouldn't have to do this whole 675 this year. But we probably should be doing 300 plus, maybe at least $400,000 in repairs. I had budgeted initially 300,000. We might want to spend more than that so that we're catching up on past repairs. A lot of these came from the work that was done this year. So a lot of these are just found and discovered this year. So we're not very behind on this. But there are a few left over from previous years. So once we get that information in more detail, I will share that as we go forward. Before I address the next slide, one thing I hadn't added to this yet, but I want to mention, and that is, I'm still very interested in buying back the streetlights from Duquesne Light. Doing that should potentially save $60,000 to $70,000 a year. We now pay $95,000 a year for basically renting our streetlights from Duquesne Light, and they cost about $14 a month per unit. But they really should only cost about $3 to $4 a month based on energy costs and repair costs and whatnot. So we're looking into a loan fund that Allegheny County runs for municipalities. It hasn't been very well utilized in the past, but we're talking to Lauren Conley, who just took over as the director of economic development, and she's very interested in helping us out in figuring out if this is a fund that we can use for this. So I'll provide, as soon as I have more information on that, I can figure out how that comes into the budget. That will probably be on the budget will be a smaller number because it's really just the number to start the process, which is a legal process, $10,000 to $15,000 to work with the company to start that process. But as I get more information on that, I will let everyone know.
Can I just ask two
Sure.
clarifying, those questions that are going through my brain? Is that normal for them to own streetlights?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's different all over the country.
Okay.
In Pennsylvania, most municipalities rent them from the provider, but there's been several municipalities in the eastern part of the state by Philadelphia that have bought theirs back and are saving a lot of money. The city of Pittsburgh bought theirs back several years ago, I think 20 years ago, actually. And several other municipalities have done that. So yeah, it's something that is been done in the state, and it's commonly done in most other, I shouldn't say most, in a lot of other states that municipalities own them.
Okay, and then my question on if Gateway says, here's a couple projects would that just mean they couldn't get done this year? Or are you thinking they could, and that's like putting that money, like flagging it, like, well, we spent this amount, but the job wasn't done?
No, well, just to clarify, I'm talking about, we have a contract out right now to do manhole to manhole liners. They are under budget, and so we could do a change order and add something to it
Okay,
this year. If it's under budget and it's still under, and we can use that to pay for something this year, then we don't have to pay for it next
okay.
year.
It wouldn't be like a whole new, hey, we should do this. It'd be adding on to what's already
Exactly,
in the works. Okay,
exactly,
okay.
exactly. It's not like putting out a new bid.
That's what
Yeah.
I was like, how are we gonna get that done by the end? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, and that's because they're already doing the work.
Okay.
And out there in the field doing it.
okay.
Those are good questions. Thanks. All right, so moving on to the next thing. So, I mentioned to Colette at the beginning here that the road fund has a surplus of approximately 1.2 million after the reserve is met. We could budget C20, so there's a number of things we could do and use this money in multiple different ways. So we could budget the C20 work, the road work, sorry, I don't know what road work. So we could budget the C20 work from the road fund because a lot of it is paving
So
anyway.
basically you're saying part or most of our match, instead of coming from the bond fund, put it from the road fund.
Correct.
Okay.
And then we would pull money from the reserve into the road fund, and so that would take down money from the reserve. If we did that, we could add we could add money to the bond fund for future projects, so we could put a little bit more money into the bond fund and.
Or leave a little more money in it.
Or leave, exactly, well, yeah, I guess that's probably the more
Yes.
accurate is leaving, so could leave additional money in the bond fund. We could use it as a match for a PennDOT multimodal grant, because I know there's a lot of interest in applying for a PennDOT multimodal grant for the shopping center or for Route 60 projects. So we could use that additional funds for that, or it could be used to add additional discretionary spending in the 2025 budget to those items. Another thing that we could do is we could eliminate the road fund tax for a year or two, keeping the same overall tax rate at 8.59. And right now we have 6.17 goes to, or I forget the exact numbers, but 6 point something goes to the general fund and 2.42 goes to the road fund. If for 1 year we eliminate the money for the road fund, it'll go in and it'll increase the general fund reserve. Or we could use it to increase the general fund for a year. And then we could bring up the balance of our general fund reserve. That's probably the most conservative option of them, or probably the two most conservative options are using it for the bond fund for future projects, or eliminating the road tax for a year to increase the general fund reserve. But I wanted to bring that up as an idea before we look at the decisions, because there's a little bit of flexibility there that we can play with. So now I'm going to turn it over to the actual budget planning document. I'll stop share for that one. And
It's small over there.
okay. All right, so I took to heart a few of the things that you said first, which is clarifying the colors at the top here, so it's easier to read. Again, where there's four sheets on this document. This main sheet is basically all of the actuals from 2016 to today. Well, actually till August 31st, or and that's what this is through August 31st or of this year. That's not actually, that's the percentage. But here's the budget actual. So you can see what the budget is for this year, where we're at, over, under, percentage, and then any notes about that comment. So that's where that is. And then for 2025, this is the proposed budget that you in this column, so you can go all the way down and see what the proposed budget for everything in that column is. And then use these items to see where things come from. So if you go down, you see these gray ones. This is cells that data come from other sources but are not connected. For example, these are not going up because these are interest rates or interest for our bank accounts. And we anticipate this going down because interest rates are starting to go down. So we anticipate that going down. But you can look through the whole document. There's several places where you'll see different things. So cells with data from other sheets are fed here, and these either come from leases and debt or from payroll. So these are every line item for the whole borough. We have the leases and debt, which are all the current leases that we have. So for example, truck 111, this is the lease for truck 111. The capital plan calls for a new truck in 2025. So that's also budgeted in here. Same thing with, well, there's actually two, and a new pickup truck is also scheduled in the capital plan for next year. But you can go through and you can see all the different plans. These two right here, Penvest, these two Penvest. Penvest is a source from the state that is used for sewer projects. So these are sewer projects that were done prior to anybody who was on council here. And we'll be ending those payments in 2026 and 2027. So those are two large Penvest loans that we got in the past for sewer projects. The bond fund, we've talked about quite a bit, but these are the bond fund payments every year, and that will be paid off in 2037. Spartan fire truck is a fire truck that the volunteer fire department uses. And then we have one more public. These are the totals for public works because public works has several things. And that's how it feeds into the other sheet.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Is there a reason we lease versus just buying them?
So, yes, leasing for a municipal entity is very different than a standard. It's basically a purchase plan. I don't know why. Do you know why they call them leases and not? Yeah, and not loans. I have no idea why, but when you're done with the lease, you own it. And it's not an additional payment. It's just you own it. I don't know why municipal leases are like that, but that's the way they work.
Interesting.
It's not a leases, it's like that when the parent, like come to buy it.
Interesting.
What's that?
If they have stores like that where you can lease a TV.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
All right.
And then all the payroll decisions are in here as well. With all of the different benefits and whatnot that everyone has. All right, with that being said, we get to the fund page, which is the decision page. And this is the decisions for 2025, and I'll go through them again for you.
Can you make that bigger, like
Sure.
move it? So we can
Yep.
see it?
So I also put this number in here so you can see currently what I have in this document, $642,000 in discretionary spending. All right, so we have the municipal property decisions. These are tables and chairs for the community center. We had for 30 new chairs and 60 new for 30 new tables and 60 new chairs, we're looking at about $12,000. I have these selected as yes, but this is arbitrary. These are your decisions. I just have it put in there so that the balance, I think we have currently a balanced budget. So if you put something in, we'd have to take something out and vice versa. And then floor for the community center, new is 10,000 estimate. I haven't gotten a final estimate for these, so that might change that a little bit. This is in the grant as well. Landscaping for the Borough building, Borough wayfinding, these are both currently in the DCED grant
You said this is in a grant, it's in a grant application?
application, yes. Thank you. I will put that in there. Yes.
Jim, we talked about improvements to the office areas too, like
Mhm.
carpet and paint.
But we're still trying to get through that maybe this year.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't put that in here yet because we're hoping to maybe get some of that done this year.
Yeah, because they were in the budget for this year.
Right. And they haven't been done yet.
Right.
I can add them in here.
Let's DIY it. Do it. Oh, hands
I'll just put a note that at the next meeting they'll be added in, just so we have them in here.
Okay. So if we don't do them this year, the money it sits in reserves, then, or in the
Yeah.
general fund.
Yeah, but the general fund starts over. I mean, we're on a cash basis, so if it doesn't get spent this year, we would have to
It's out.
budget it again. Yep. Continuing to go down the list, we've talked, everybody is aware that the elevator will need to eventually be replaced. I think we can make it through next year, but, it needs to be on the list eventually. So we have it, maintained every year, so if they change their tune next year, then we'll talk about that. Awning for the Borough building, this is an awning for the, just for the Borough building in the back, where most people enter the building and there's no awning. The admin restroom is still on here, I forgot.
The restroom.
Right, yeah,
I think
It's said as a no.
yeah, it said as a no, yep.
I think I've asked this before and there was an explanation, but why don't people use the front door in the Borough building?
Well, more people access it from parking and, and we keep it locked and we don't have a buzzer on that door. So we have, during COVID, they kept the building secured and it allows us to not need as much staff in the building to have it, so you have to come in and, with a buzzer. So we've just left it that way.
And also cameras.
Right, and we have cameras, right? Oh, right, on the back door. Right.
Yep.
Is there an ADA accessible entrance?
Yes.
Beside, it's in this part of the building.
Exactly. You
so
have
people-
to, the only way it's accessible is you cannot get to the police station from there. You'd have to go in through the garage. But even then, you'd only be able to meet a police officer. They wouldn't be
In
able
the
to.
garage. Cause there's still
Right.
steps,
Yep.
and I would bet that the hallway's too narrow.
Yeah, you cannot get down that hallway. Yeah.
So
That,
that's,
police department, we won't be talking about it this year, but it is woefully
Yep.
under, under adequate requirements.
Agreed. And then the next thing on the list, we put in a number of 50,000. It can be up to 80,000. We don't know yet. But I have that budgeted in there and I have that as a yes, because I think that's an absolute priority. Drop spreader, we might actually purchase this, see if we can get this in this year's budget. And purchase it for this fall with one of the line items that we have room on. I will let everyone know if we take it, if that is the case, I will take it off the next budget workshop. And then we have budget pacing for asphalt and for brick. And everybody has now two, in their, mailboxes, a PennDOT study that, PennDOT did in Mount Lebanon, regarding their brick streets. And I think it has a really good process for assessing them and for making decisions regarding them. So Larry's gonna be looking into that and working through that, and we might be able to get a little more information for future budget sessions to talk about how we might be able to invest in the brick streets to save what we can as we move forward. So that's where it's at. And I have currently taken out all asphalt paving for this year, since we are doing so much paving in the Broadhead project and in the Steuben project. That we're going to be doing more paving than we would ever do in a given year anyway. But that's open for discussion again, of course. These are all items all the pool items for the most part, except for one, I've moved to 2026 because I would like to apply for DCNR grants for this. But if you do apply for DCNR grants for this, we apply in January. We don't find out till the end of the year, so they won't happen until 2026 anyway. The only thing that I have on here that I'm waiting to hear back about, we did get in the final report from Heather that there are pool liner issues. I have no.
Liner is not that old.
I know, I'm aware. Apparently there's bubbles underneath it and if it gets underneath there, I put $20,000 because I have no idea what it'll cost. So we are waiting for a more thorough estimate of that. It might be 5,000. It might be 4,000. I have no idea. I just know that there are potential repairs, and these are the types of repairs that if you don't do them,
Absolutely.
they cause more problems down the road.
I thought there was a warranty on that because we had
might be,
issues
yeah.
a couple years ago.
Right.
And then it's a new pool, relatively new pool liner. And I thought we had a warranty and they came out, Dave will know, because
Yeah.
Killen and everybody will know. They came out and fixed it because it caused a delay to the pool opening, I think. We had to get it right before the pool opening 2 years ago. And then if we're having issues again, then yeah, there has to be.
Well, it was damaged last year, if you remember, before the pool opened, because a piece of equipment got loose and they patched those. I don't know if that's related. But we are, yeah.
I think when Doug was here, we were talking about whatever had torn or broke, was it under the warranty? That might have said no, but I think
Okay.
there's a warranty associated with it.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I will definitely, I'll find out more about that. I've talked about this new code enforcement car. Season is driving one of the worst vehicles that we have. And there is a potential to get a fairly inexpensive electric vehicle. Because a lot of the rental places are selling them very inexpensively. So we talked about that. So that would be in the $20,000 ballpark. For a brand new, for not a new, but a used electric vehicle for season.
Can I ask on the electrical vehicle? I know that we're kind of doing the work to see if we can get the plug-ins.
Chargers.
Chargers, thank you.
Mhm.
Is there one around here that she could use?
You wouldn't need it for that vehicle. You could just have it a 220 line in a building.
Okay,
And so it would be
Okay.
fairly easy.
In the, what they call the front garage.
Right,
okay,
right.
Okay.
And for as much as they drive, they could use a trickle. They could use a level 1, which is just plugging into the wall. So
I don't know, the last Uber I had, he was like, people are getting rid of their electrical cars because no one can plug them in. I'm like, ooh,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they use it a lot more than, okay.
right.
I mean, I was like, oh my gosh.
I have one, but in-
I had,
And then we've talked about the two things in the park, the dog park and the bocce ball court in the park. I have those both marked as yes for now, and those come up to 30,000. Again, the decisions are arbitrary. You get to decide what they are. And keep in mind too, for things like paving, paving is the only example maybe. How much the things like paving and these repairs, how much of these we do can be discussed as well. So you don't necessarily have to choose yes to the 125,000. Once we get the list of spot repairs, we can say yes to 85,000 or yes to 200,000 of excavation. We can decide where they are, but currently I have it at 425 just to balance the budget, and that's where we're at right now. And once we get more information from Gateway about these particular repairs and what needs to be done right now, what can be done later, we can discuss it at that point.
that information from Gateway, I think you said that earlier, you're hoping like within a 2-week, okay.
Yeah, I really hope to get it by the next meeting. We discussed it with them today and they had preliminary numbers, but it's really not like a laid out decision.
Okay,
It's not very good for making a decision.
Yeah.
So, but that's it. Those are the discretionary decisions in the current budget. And I guess from here, it's discussion amongst yourself about what we want to do. We could also wait. I mean, we have a lot of things that we're still waiting on the final numbers to decide, what we're doing. And then you have to make a decision or you would make a decision on what to do with the wind fund money, whether you want to move some into discretionary funding, whether you want to use it as a backup of the bond fund, or, how you want to move forward with that.
it's hard I wish we had, obviously that Gateway stuff to know how much those things are gonna cost.
Yeah, I mean, we're in no rush. I mean, we have another, we can do this in October once we get some of these better numbers, but this gets everybody comfortable.
Yeah.
And everybody has this in their email. Again, I sent it again today, and I sent 2 versions. I sent the live link that I'm updating, so you can see it as it changes. Or if you want to play around with the numbers on the other one, by all means, please do. And
Don't play in the live links, right?
no,
Yeah.
yes, please, yes.
That's-
Yeah, I made it very
Sure.
clear in the
Okay.
email. Do not play around with it.
I'm gonna be like,
Yeah,
say that,
I will-
to sell.
I will be saving a backup one periodically to make sure that.
Let's talk
doesn't
about
happen.
what brings joy, the dog park. Do we? do we know in the park where that would go, or is that a part of the whole process with this potential dog park?
I would say it's the latter.
The whole part of the, like, cause it's just a great idea that needs to
Yeah.
start at the beginning.
Yeah. Currently, in my eyes, it's just a place
Okay.
saver right
I
now.
didn't know, in the master parks plan, if it was a part of the, this would be a
Not-
great
not in-
spot for it, kind of thought.
In
There-
in the wet dream, it would be down in this whole development, near near the public works, which is so far off. In planning, I think that the current idea is to find part of the big park
Gotcha.
to do that with. So there's no, at this point, no drawing for it. But
Okay.
I think that's where it's kind of gravitated. And, you know, in the whole master parks thing, it's just, it comes up as a high,
Probably what people want.
yes.
Yes.
Yep, and
yes.
it is in the parks plan drawing of the main park, but most of the things that are on that drawing probably won't happen.
Okay.
or
Right,
can't happen.
because there was that drawing is also another dream in the sky.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
Okay.
7 million, if we did
Yeah.
everything in that, it's a $7 million budget, so we're not, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is there any, for the public works building, is there anything that needs to be in the decision list for that building, or is that
That's in the bond fund.
in the bond? Okay.
Yeah, and so that's all, so the bond fund really is budgeted in two ways. So in this, it has line items, just like any other budget item.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, here we go. So these are, and you can see these numbers are monsters.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because these are all from the bond fund. And you can see I don't have a bunch of line items going over here, because
Yeah.
the idea is to spend this money and be done.
Uh-huh.
But these are all the projects in the bond fund. So we have money going to the C20 projects, and there's two different types. There's the separation projects, and then there's also the green infrastructure projects. There's the blight wait, no, that's not right. The blight remediation, we have budgeted 200,000. And that's doing the house on Belvedere and potentially looking at if that goes well,
Mhm.
looking at other potential uses. We have the Green Light Go, that's the new street light on Linden Avenue, on Linden and Steuben. We have the Noble and Linwood Park money, and I just arbitrarily budgeted for that at this point. Because we haven't finalized that, the public works building, some of the finishing of the stair project we anticipate coming in next year. Oh, do I not have Station Street budgeted? Oh, I'll need to double check that. That might need to get budgeted.
Are you sure that number that's in for sidewalk and stairs? Shouldn't be in.
Oh, yep, that's exactly what it was.
Because
That's exactly what it
We did
was.
not spend that much money on the whole stairs project.
Yeah, we did.
Where, okay,
Oh, 150,000?
yeah.
Oh, we spent 500,000.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's what it is. Okay. Good catch. This is why good to have you and some others go through this, because with 500 lines of this, I'm gonna make mistakes. Yeah, yeah,
We're humans.
yeah. And then these are the engineering costs for those same projects.
So I think part of it is, from the paving, or in my mind, is around, and we talked a little bit about this before, the brick streets and the cost for that, because there hasn't been a lot of analysis or work on them. It's been on the regular streets, and I think next year should probably be a focus around the brick streets, because we haven't, and there's some of them are, in bad condition. We're fixing some of them around the Broadhead project, but it's an area that we've neglected over these years. We need to look at. On the dog park, I'd be interested in, the planning commission looking at that, but also, definitely getting public comment regarding it. Is it something, there are pros with it, of course, for the dogs. There's cons too. There's liability. Somebody has to clean it, because there's going to be, lots of issues there, and also mowing inside and everything else, depending on where it is. So getting public comment on that dog park would be something.
Insurance work on a dog park.
You know the answer?
It would just be included in.
Okay,
Yeah, we have a pretty large rider. It's like a $10 million
okay,
insurance.
But
Rider.
that's a good point, because once you
It
have
could affect
big
it.
and little dogs and they don't get along, we certainly don't want anybody injured or any dogs
yes,
to be injured.
big dog park, little dog park.
You don't have two dog
Wasn't any
parks, okay.
elephant comments, I'm not gonna.
Well, we just have a fence down the main
I was gonna.
and the gates.
Planning commission has talked about dog parks quite extensively in the past few months. But there's been no movement,
Yeah,
we've been looking for different locations. Acres was thrown out, but I don't think that's feasible given the slope. But
I don't think there's any place wide enough. in
Oh, my
that property
properties would be
It doesn't fall off.
nice.
There's no bus.
Yeah, the problem, I think that
Hard to
the
get
complaints
to.
we've had about that is how
Not
far
well.
away it is from everybody's houses, like it's.
sounds like I do though, you
Yep.
have a big parking lot,
Park now.
down by
Some
Public Works.
Develops better.
I mean.
Yes.
exactly.
You take the fence down. and
And
off
if
you
the
go.
dogs are barking, people are complaining.
Also, follow up on the brick streets.
Mhm.
That's very expensive, $100,000 will not get us far at all. So we may, once we know more about it, we probably will need to crank that up.
Would Larry be kind of prioritizing the streets that, that was my first question. Larry would kind of prioritize what brick street would need the most improvement?
There's a whole way that this plan has to analyze which ones to
There
focus
was the
on.
one from PennDOT.
Yeah,
We all
it's-
haven't read yet.
Yes, it is, it is.
That's right.
Oh, I just sent it, so you
Yeah.
just got it today, so no blame anywhere.
Aspersions here.
Yeah, no aspersion.
Aspersions, yes.
But it does go through and look at a lot of different things. What is the architectural value of this? And it also says you should reach out to people on the street. Do they want their brick street replaced? There's a whole course of things that they recommend doing. Because you may find, and I would not be surprised on the really bad brick streets that they don't want them saved because they've hated them. But it's up to, that there's a whole process, and I think it's really good. It includes, what's the overall value of the houses on the street? Is it gonna add value to those houses, or is it not? Is it recognizable? Is it, there's all different kinds of things that it asks and has it go through, and it also has you go through how much work are they gonna take? If they're really rutted, those are repairs that are hard, that are not spot repairs as much. So you've got to figure out, there's a whole way to analyze it.
Yeah.
And I can do, at the next budget presentation, I can do a light presentation on that, on how the analysis would go. And we can budget a number and finish the analysis in the next year. Like we wouldn't have to, we could budget a number and then use that number as the goal for how much we repair, and then we'll figure it out from
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful, because, I mean, I know we have them and people like them, but I think there's so much more to it. And I think that you're saying that report sheds light. I mean, I live on one, I love it, but if the big picture is like, it's gonna cost X amount of dollars in maintenance, and the people on my street are like, yes or no, I mean, I think there's a lot that goes into thinking about it versus we know they're lovely, we do like them. There's more to it than that, and I think a little overview on that report would be great.
I will absolutely do that in the next meeting. Yep.
So Vince, are you saying for the dog park, we should change that to no for next year?
No, I think it should be yes.
Oh, okay, because I thought you said you're not.
I mean, there's hasn't been movement, but I think there should be movement.
I think the planning commission's had
Agreed.
their hands full, so I can see why dog park's not.
Yes, recently we had a visible, the next few months, hopefully that we freed up and we can focus on dog park.
Yeah.
That's my opinion, I'm not speaking for the planning commission.
Well, as a cat lady, I think a dog park would be great, so.
Okay, well, that's what I have. So if there's no other questions, we can recess for 10 minutes and
Okay.
come back to the meeting. Or
Okay,
unless
great.
there's additional,
Yeah, the action items, of course, for all of us are the email that was sent today with all those details, reading all 2,000 lines of them and going through them and making sure that they're accurate. And want to emphasize too, that part of the planning is there is no tax increase, real estate tax increase for the 5th year. So that's in this budget that we see it today.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, thank
Alright,
you
cool.
very much.
Thanks.